And welcome to this public forum with the candidates for the Burleigh County Commission. I'm Dot Frank with the League of Women Voters, and I will be this evening's moderator. This candidate forum has been organized by the League of Women Voters of Bismarck, Mandan, and is co-sponsored by the Bismarck Tribune and Dakota Media Access. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that promotes the informed participation of all citizens in their government. The League does not endorse nor oppose candidates or political parties. There are 3 candidates running for election for 2 open seats on the Burleigh County Commission, and all 3 of them have joined us this evening. They are Jerry Sowdy, Brian Bittner, and Jerry Woodcox. The audience here tonight, May 26th, is invited to submit questions on the index cards provided, and viewers and listeners may phone or text in questions for the candidates. The number to call is 355-1312 or text BMLWV to the number 22333. This is intended to be a respectful exchange of ideas. Our purpose this evening is to provide voters with information about the candidates and their positions on issues that affect the people of Burleigh County. Now let's meet our candidates. You each have 1 minute to tell us why you are seeking election to the Burleigh County Commission. And we'll begin with our first candidate by drawing Mr. Jerry Sowdy.
Thank you, Dot, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm running again, and because I now have experience in running one campaign, but the elections are about choices, and I think that the electors need to have choices. They need to have a way to scrutinize candidates who are incumbents and the work that they have done, but it's up to me then to offer myself up as an alternative, and I need to bring something to the table, such as experience and important issues to address for the county, and so that's what I hope that we can do tonight and in the coming months.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Bittner.
Well, I guess it's a good question. I asked myself that. Generally speaking, I'm running again because so many people asked me to, and I felt that it's the right thing to do because of the positive feedback I get from citizens. I think that my first 2 terms, people have gotten to know me pretty well, and they understand my position on things and how I act as a commissioner, and I think that I still have some things to offer to the citizens of Burleigh County.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Woodcox.
I'm running again. This is my 5th term. There's several reasons. This year is going to be a very difficult budget year. I think we need a lot of experience in handling that budget, and the handling budget for the next 2 years are going to be very difficult. With all the reduced revenue that we're going to see, it's going to be very tough to make some tough decisions, and I think experience is very important in doing that. I also am heavily involved with the jail construction, and I want to see that project through. It's going to be done middle to later next year. And also we've just we've engaged the Bismarck Park District in handling our parks and handling the Missouri River Complex. And that is going to be a real exciting project, and I'd like to see that go through. And I think it will in 10 seconds. Is that all? And I think it will, but that needs experience. It really does, and I think that's why I'm running for 1 more term.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the questions developed by members of the League of Women Voters, the Bismarck Tribune, our in-house audience, and viewers at home. For our audience here to submit a question, please use the index cards provided. Viewers may submit questions tonight, May 26th, by phone at 355-1312 or by sending a text message to the number 22333 In that message, please include the letters BMLWV. Candidates have not been given advance copies of the questions, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Please comply with our time restrictions so that we can get to as many questions as possible tonight. Our timer will let you know when you are down to 30 seconds, then 10 seconds, and stop. And now we'll begin the questions. The first question is for Mr. Saudi. What would you like to see done with the fairgrounds site?
It's county property, and the county can use that as they see fit. They can either sell it or they can allow other groups to use it. I think until interested groups come forward, I don't think anything else needs to be done with it. There are improvements that have been made for the rodeo grounds, the 4-H building that's very active and it's used by the public a lot. I know there are more events that are happening each summer, but it remains kind of a bank of land that could be used for county purposes or for public use.
Same question to Mr. Bittner. What would you like to see done with the fairgrounds site?
Well, I think I'd like to see us continue to develop that for the public's use. We've been real clear about doing modifications and improvements out there over the years, specifically to enhance the public's use of the site. I see no harm in continuing to do that as long as there's sufficient public need.
And now Mr. Woodcox.
As I mentioned before, that's one of the main reasons I'm running. We've just completed an agreement with the Bismarck Parks District to manage our parks, the Burleigh County parks. One of the main things is the Missouri Valley Complex, and I anticipate in the next we'll have a master plan by the end of this year, and then we'll go from there. We're looking at a multi-purpose building down the road, which will handle horse shows, indoor archery, indoor shooting, trails around the outside, water projects on the southwest corner. There's just a lot of things that can be done. We're looking for public input, and we'll have public hearings to do that, and we'll get all the user groups together and put all that together and come up with a plan and proceed. I think the future is unbelievable what that property can do.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin this question with Mr. Bittner. What are your ideas for managing the county budget at a time of budget cutbacks and future reduced levels of spending?
Well, I think clearly there's probably not a single budget in the county that can't stand a little bit of cutting or reorganizing somewhere. We've got very good staff at the county that's engaged in the budget process. They are well experienced in budgeting. They've never had a whole lot of money to work with. If anything, Burleigh County has been quite conservative, which we're careful about. And so I think we're going to look at the the kind of income we have now and the expenditures that the department heads come forward with, and we'll fine-tune it from there.
Mr. Woodcox, same question. What are your ideas for managing the county budget at a time of budget cutbacks and future reduced levels of funding?
We know we've already gotten warnings from the state that there's going to be considerable reduction not only in the highway department but in the general fund budget. I'm going to propose a hiring freeze. I think we can handle our projects and our works with the amount of people we've got right now. I think if we got, even this year, if we've got an opening, I think we should not hire it, not fill it, so we'll be able to manage the budget better next year. And hiring employees is one of our biggest expenses, and we've just got to cut that back. What have I got, 10 seconds? 30 seconds, okay. We want every one of our department heads to sit down, and we'll be working with them in July and August of this year to really analyze their budgets and find out where we can cut back some excesses, programs that we might not be able to have this year that we've had in the past.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Saudi, what are your ideas for managing the county budget?
I think sometimes the budget gets lost when people look at their property tax statement and they have to write that check. And as everyone knows, that check goes to a lot of different entities. The school board takes up more than 50% of that check. And the remaining then, probably between 50 and 6% is actually county general fund, which the commissioners run county operations, and the rest of it goes to other taxing entities that have authority. And so it's very complicated, and I think if the public really needs to be educated as to what makes up all the budgets. And I think that as a commissioner, I would like to be in discussion with all those entities as they prepare their budgets and plan, because as the commissioners have said, it's not going to be as easy next year.
This next question begins with Mr. Woodcox. What is your opinion on the viability of an interchange at 66th Street and I-94?
Thank you. It's on the list of long-range plans, and I know the city has been pushing for it. The 66 is, in my mind, is not the correct position to put it. I think we should put it farther east to 80th Street, mainly because 66 is being developed rapidly inside of that, and I think it should be farther out so we can plan for the future. 66 is not, there's no road north of there. It ends, there'll be the major cost. We've got to look at the benefits, whether or not it's really worth it, because they're talking about trying to cut down on truck traffic and that in Bismarck and on State Street. But if you analyze it, I think a lot of those trucks come from Minneapolis and they head to Jamestown. They cut across to go to Minot. They don't come through Bismarck. And so really, for the multi-million dollars that it's going to spend and take and cost, I don't think it's a viable project for that interchange. I think they should move it farther east.
And Mr. Saudi, your opinions on the viability of an interchange at 66th and I-94?
Well, I'm sure there will be lots of studies to determine if it's actually needed and what kind of volume there will be. We do know that the growth in the Bismarck area is going to the west and to the north, and so probably an interchange in that general area, whether it's 66th or 80th, may be coming, and it may be very necessary. But I will defer that to the engineers and planners.
Thank you. Mr. Bittner.
Good question. We've actually gotten copies of studies already done, and it appears that the DOT, both state and federal, aren't going to fund that project at 66th Street, primarily because they don't want to spend those kind of dollars to remedy local traffic problems. They want the local traffic handled by the local entities, and so that's already being done. So it's not really cost effective to put it on 66th. I personally live on 80th Street, and if that was on 80th Street, it would kind of be better for me, and I don't want people to think that. So I want to reserve comment a little bit. However, it would only be better for me because I could get to town faster myself because there'd be an interchange. But I do think that 66 is probably not the right place for it.
Thank you. And now transitioning from managing traffic to encouraging growth, particularly from a residential perspective. This question will begin with Mr. Saudi. What strategies do you propose for managing the growth of residential housing in the rural areas and the resulting demand for infrastructure?
I'm very high on private property rights, but with it comes responsibility. And so as developers subdivide land to create houses, I mean, it's great for the tax base, but there has to be some responsibility also in the maintenance. I mean, I see subdevelopments with roads that wind and circle and curve around, and you can get lost almost in those things. And I don't think that's good for public transportation if they want the public to maintain them. If they're truly private roads, then I think they could do as they please. But I think that our planning needs to come up with a little more structure in order to keep those as public highways.
Thank you. Same question now for Mr. Bittner. What strategies do you propose for managing the growth of residential housing in the rural areas and the resulting demand for infrastructure?
Well, as you probably know, the planning and zoning portfolio is one that I hold, and we have taken a real proactive stance in regards to that growth. The size of the lots and those developments aren't really causing an undue burden on infrastructure. Those roads already exist. It actually is a benefit to the county when some of these areas are getting developed, because then the developers need to pave any gravel roads. We have a pavement improvement policy and county standards to meet. There's nothing new as far as density coming down the road, and I think that the infrastructure that's there now at that density is adequate.
Thank you. And now Mr. Woodcox, same question. What strategies do you propose for managing the growth of residential housing in rural areas and the resulting demand for infrastructure?
I think that we've relied upon the developers when they develop an area to have the land and buy the land and build the roads inside. But I think we have to be very careful. We have to cooperate with the Bismarck Planning Department and the Burleigh County Planning Zoning District to work together to get the development along the main thoroughfares right now, rather than having spot zoning and spots all around and have to create a whole new infrastructure. Those roads are very expensive, and it's hard to do without keeping them on the main roads. It's going to go north and it's going to go east primarily, a little bit to the south, but we've got to maintain our main roads and make them come along that, and be careful about where we zone so we don't do some spot zoning and make it very inconvenient and a lot more expensive than what it needs to be.
Well, your reference to collaboration provided a perfect segue into the next question, and this will be addressed to Mr. Bittner. How can Burleigh County collaborate more with the Bismarck City Commission and other governmental entities, including those in Mandan and Morton County?
Well, we already have quite a few efforts at collaboration, so I'm not sure what we could add to that. We have the Intergovernmental Committee. We have members from the city sitting on the county planning, members of the county planning sitting on the city planning. The Metropolitan Planning Organization has members from Mandan and Morton County, as well as Bismarck, Burleigh County, and Lincoln. So we're already collaborating quite extensively, and we work on long-range studies and plans accordingly.
Mr. Woodcox, same question. How can the county collaborate more with the Bismarck City Commission and other governmental entities, including Mandan and Morton County?
We have a current committee of the BMMB, which is Bismarck, Mandan, Morton, and Burleigh, which is meeting regularly, not as often as I'd like, but that's where the jail started. The jail project came out of that committee. We've also we are working with the communication centers, and we've got that done. All the communication centers will be together. We've just completed a agreement with the Park District to cooperate with them and let them manage our parks, which we aren't in the park business, and I think that's going to be a great arrangement. There's other things that we can do. This intergovernmental committee needs to work. I think they're meeting right upstairs right now, but they need to work more often and more regularly, because I've felt there's been a kind of a divergence of city commission and county commission, and we've got to turn that around.
Thank you. And now Mr. Saudi.
I think the groundwork has been laid for that. The commission has worked with Morton County. They've also worked with the city of Bismarck on the jail construction, the 911 system, emergency communications. They've also worked with the city now on managing the county parks. And so the groundwork has been laid, but now it's maybe time the county needs to look at working with the townships. With 41 organized townships, there's 41 other boards out there. And I see that there are infrastructure needs in the counties, and some of them are in the townships, and they're lacking maybe in funding and leadership and needing some ideas. I think over the period of years, they could be brought together to work with the county and the cities and all the rural areas.
Thank you. Well, I've asked about how you can collaborate or come together. Now I'm going to ask some questions about what's happened since you've separated or parted ways in a certain capacity. This next question will be directed to Jerry, Mr. Woodcox. What is your position on the effectiveness of the county's planning and zoning services since separating from the city of Bismarck, and what changes should be considered for the future?
That was one of I was one of the main, probably the main person to drag my feet on separating those two, because I felt it was necessary for them to work together, and they were. I wanted a one-stop shop type of an arrangement, which makes sense, makes economic sense, but to be realistic, the county people were getting poor service. They would go in and would take 8-10 months to get a building permit done, or whatever the construction they wanted to do. We didn't have staff. The city did not have the staff to take care of it, and it wasn't working. So I changed my mind, and we started the Burleigh County Planning Zoning Department. It's doing very well. It collects the fees. We're virtually breaking even. It doesn't cost the county any more than it did before, and we're providing outstanding service. You can go in and out of there inside of 2 months and have a building permit and have a house up and completed without any more time than that, which was really much more significant than what happened before.
Same question for Mr. Saudi. What is your position on the effectiveness of the county's planning and zoning services since separating from the city of Bismarck, and what changes should be considered for the future?
I heard at the last commission meeting that was the fact, as Commissioner Woodcock stated, that it is working very well. It's unfortunate that has to be redundancy in government services, as so much the development around Bismarck where you're needing a building permit may eventually be annexed into the city. So I'd hope that those rules and the zoning requirements are all meshing, and so that there aren't problems down the road. But if it's working, that's good, but it's unfortunate if it's redundant.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bittner.
I got to tell you, it's been working out outstanding. As a contractor myself, I'm really sensitive to the input from the county's developers and contractors and all, and they've made it very clear to me that they are much more satisfied with the service that they're receiving from Burleigh County than they were from the city. It's unfortunate. Maybe it was staffing. Maybe there were other issues. I don't know what the problems were. But in a nutshell, it's working out very well. Some of the things that I would like to see possibly change, and you'll probably hear this coming up now. If you want to pay attention, you'll hear this coming up at the Burleigh County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, where we're going to be talking about some additional things that we would like to do in conjunction with the city, particularly in the area of where the jurisdictional lines are and what services are being handled by whom within those lines, because there's still a real feeling out in the county, which is essentially anybody outside the city limits, that they should be able to get building permits and inspections and whatnot from the people that they ultimately end up voting for. So that's where we're headed.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite our in-house audience to submit questions using the index cards provided, and remind viewers that they may call in today, May 26th, to the number 355-1312 with any questions they may have. We also make texting available. If you've got questions, you can text the code BMLWV to the number 22333. Next question, and this time we'll begin with Mr. Saudi. As population increases, how does Burleigh County meet public health and safety needs?
Probably just continue what they're doing. I think Burleigh County does a very good job in meeting those. But yeah, population growth will bring changes and bring new challenges with the people that come with it. Enough said.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Bittner. As population increases, how does Burleigh County meet public health and safety needs?
I think that the things that we've already been doing are certainly aiming towards a better service in regards to that. Recently, we've had some issues with whether Custer Health is going to handle some things such as septic systems and inspections and whatnot. We're kind of actually working through that right now. We're trying to come to where the county is able to offer services on a more timely basis and in a more economical fashion. Right now, our building and inspections department is handling those kind of issues on a case-by-case basis, and I think I've heard of 3 of them in the last 24 hours. And so it's a pretty active system already. But Burleigh County is now functioning as the County Board of Health, so I think you're going to find that we'll take a real active interest in how those matters are handled moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Woodcock.
You want to repeat the question for me?
As population increases, how does Burleigh County meet public health and safety needs?
Well, like Commissioner Bittner already said, we do cooperate with the City of Bismarck already. Our employees are working directly with them all the time. It's an expanding field, but I don't know of any specifics that would need to be changed other than what's already being done. We work very well with them, and we've had very few problems. So I think it should continue the way it is, make sure that it's staffed, and make sure they have an adequate budget, and go from there.
Thank you. And now we have a question from our audience. This question will begin with a response from Mr. Bittner. What common ground do you see for the county and city regarding economic development tools, which may include tax abatements?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question, isn't it? First off, the county has long understood the significant impact of tax breaks to certain groups and individuals. Burleigh County is real sensitive about those, especially when it comes to economic development. I don't think anybody in the Burleigh County area can justify individual incentives. We stopped doing homeowner type of tax exemptions because people were buying homes and whatnot anyway. People are coming to Burleigh County and building businesses and living their lives without tax exemptions, and there's a really large group of people that takes it personal that a certain small group of people is probably getting tax breaks that are not available to them at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Woodcox, same question. What common ground do you see for the county and city regarding economic development tools, which may include tax abatements?
I don't know whether that question is referring to the Renaissance Zone controversy, but maybe I'll touch on that. The county recently voted down 5-0 to not extend the Renaissance Zone, and I think there was a couple of reasons for that. One, the city didn't show up to promote it. The Renaissance Zone Authority did not come, so we had made it easy for us to say no, we don't want it. Another is I think that the Renaissance Zone has extended itself. It's done a fantastic job. We voted to extend it 8 years ago, and I think it's done a great job. However, I think that is over. I think we need to, that tax dollars that would normally go to the downtown area, the Renaissance Zone, do not need to go to the TIF zone. They need to come back to the general fund, which all four political entities can take from.
Thank you. And now Mr. Saudi. What common ground do you see for the county and city regarding economic development tools, which may include tax abatements?
Maybe it's a lofty goal, but I would like to sit on a county commission who strives to keep its taxes low enough that it's never viewed as a deterrent to economic development. I think if a business is coming in and really needs an abatement on taxes, then maybe they're not the type of business we need at this time. Their business model should be structured more around the profits and not concerning a few $1,000s in losses. The trouble with these is that the tax burden then is spread among the people that are paying the taxes, and that I'm opposed to.
Thank you. Switching gears, we're going to go from taxes and downtown development to down by the river. This question is directed to Mr. Woodcox. How should the county maintain access to land along the river for public use?
Well, we don't have any access, or we don't have anything to do with anything within the city limits, so I'll refer to beyond the city limits. If everybody realizes that all section lines that end in the river are actually public property. They can't be closed off by anybody. We've got to keep those open. We certainly want to do that. We need to look at more boat ramps on north and south. The ones we've got are in excellent shape, and I think we've done a good job in maintaining them, and we need a few more. I think they're used dramatically, and I think they're an excellent way for the public to use it. We do cooperate with the city on the City Park District. They're running ours right now, and so we've got a real cohesive effort there, so they're all taken care of, and they all look good, and it's great for the public. We could use some parks along there and more camping on some of them, so that everybody can use it even more than just fishing. We need more camping.
Thank you. And now Mr. Saudi. How should the county maintain access to land along the river for public use?
If there is additional need for public access to the river besides what's already there, the county could certainly be open to looking into that. But I think it needs to be based on a user fee to develop that further. The boat landings now, there's a lot of money put into them, a lot of money put into maintenance, and I understand that they are in very good shape. So it's a mission accomplished, but to expand on that, I think there needs to be user fees attached to those in some fashion. The state will be developing a large recreation area in South Bismarck on public property. Maybe there's an opportunity there for the county to cooperate, but again, it needs to be self-funding.
Thank you. And Mr. Bittner, same question. How should the county maintain access to land along the river for public use?
The county already maintains access to the land along the river. In every case where there was available government land, we have either ownership interest or leases with, like, say, the Corps of Engineers. We work with the Game and Fish in order to maintain access. And most of these facilities that we have are pretty large. So, you know, the option would obviously be on section lines, that sort of a thing for easement, but then you have to look at purchasing property. And realistically, we don't have the budget at this time for purchasing land for additional county parks. So if that is a public need or a public demand, then we would have to look at funding that through some sort of tax or user fee. And of course, as Jerry mentioned, the state is working to enhance an area down on the south side of town, and that'll take off a lot of pressure, I'm sure, on the public access.
Thank you. We're sticking with the river on this next one, and we'll start with Mr. Saudi. How should Burleigh County prepare for future flood issues?
Wait another 500 years? You know, I helped sandbag in 2011 when we had the flood, but I was not affected by it. The issue, I don't know how you prepare for that. I mean, that was it a failure of the federal government in not maintaining Lake Sakakawea at adequate levels, and they were forced then to drain, that left parts of Bismarck inundated for months? I mean, it was a terrible shame. But, you know, if you live near water, that's always an option. I mean, you have to be prepared. I think individuals have to be prepared too. That's a tough question.
Thank you.
We hope it never happens again.
Absolutely. And now, Mr. Bittner, same question. How should Burleigh County prepare for future flood issues?
This is right up my alley because, as you may be aware, I was the chairman during the 2011 flood, and I'm the chairman today. We rotate that. It just so happened that at the time what we did is we took what we learned from the flood and we developed a flood plan within the county. So there were things based on a lack of information that maybe we could have done. Fortunately, we didn't, because some of the things that we thought we could do in order to protect property or to protect individual property wouldn't have worked. The river acted in a way that came at us from behind and whatnot. But because of the outstanding staff that we had available from all departments, especially within the county, and of course some private, and then of course the Corps of Engineers and whatnot, we developed plans now on how we would deploy resources and how we would allocate those resources. Rather than say $8 to $13 million worth of sandbags, we'd isolate that to areas that we know are above certain elevations and people that need it. We actually have a good plan in place already.
Thank you. And Mr. Woodcox, same question. How should Burleigh County prepare for future flood issues?
We've made some changes already. We do have a long-range plan. We learned so much from the flood. Our main problem we had was access. If you remember back, people couldn't get to their homes. They were riding in boats and every kind of a transportation you could think of. So we have already raised some roads up. We have targeted the roads that need to be raised. Some of those are county roads and some are township roads. But those have to be raised to keep the access there. We've finished the project down by the prison already with a dike that's down there. We're working currently with Fox Island. We've committed just under $1 million to help Fox Island residents to build a dike around there. So, but the main problem we had was access. We've also learned so much that now we can We have stockpiled sandbags out at the highway department. We know how to handle them. We know where the bad spots are. So I think our plan is in place. I think it would be very easy for us to handle a flood, barring disaster. We don't want to do that.
Thank you all. The next question, we're going to continue the conversation about roads. You had alluded, Mr. Woodcox, to raising the roads and doing some road improvement post-flood. This question is about roads as well. We'll begin with Mr. Bittner. What would you propose to ensure county roads are maintained and improved, and how would you pay for it?
You know, I'm not sure where that question came from, but we I think, Burleigh County does a real good job of maintaining and improving roads. That's been a singular focus of the Highway Department ever since they were created. In terms of flood-related things, we've pretty well got the plans in place with that. Funding of the Highway Department is certainly going to be an issue this budget session simply because of the drop in funding from the state. You know, foundation aid and gas tax dollars just aren't going to be there like they were in the past. I don't know, it looks to me like we're going to have to tighten our belts because I really don't get any support from citizens for raising taxes. So we're going to do everything we can to maintain or improve the roads without increasing taxes.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Woodcox. What would you propose to ensure county roads are maintained and improved, and how are you paying for it?
Well, right now we only dedicate $0.25 to the highway department out of general property tax. The rest of it is paid for by state tax on gas. And those revenues are relatively stable, starting to go down, so we know our budgets are going to be tight. The state has already indicated that they're dropping $2 or $3 million from surge funds, so we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have to prioritize our projects. We've got three of our big ones that are in the mill right now and are being done, and they'll be completed by the end of the year. As far as other big projects, it's going to be tough for us to fund them. We're going to have to prioritize, find out where the most need is, and provide the money accordingly. And if it doesn't get done this year, we may have to wait till the next year to do it. But nobody wants to see a tax increase. We're looking at one. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to try and maintain property tax the same way it is.
Thank you. And now Mr. Saudi.
I think if the question comes from a rural area, there's probably a jurisdictional conflict between the township and the county. The counties don't provide, they do contract services, I believe, for maintenance and grading of the roads. But for actually adding additional gravel or doing major repairs to the roads, it falls to the townships, and so I think there's a disconnect there. In the past, you know, we've worked with the sales tax issue for the jail. We presented that to the people, and they approved it. The school board went through a major bond issue a few years ago. They explained the need, and people supported it. And I think if we have roads that truly need maintenance, and if we proposed a short-term tax to pay for it, and people knew that's where it went, I believe they would support it. We could find savings in other areas.
Thank you. This next question will direct first to Mr. Woodcox. What are your ideas for dealing with the increasing rates of incarceration?
It's a good question and a tough question. I think so many problems we've got now in our jail and why it's so full is pre-sentence inmates. They're there, they're not out on bond, but I think like 70% of them are sitting there waiting for a trial. We've certainly got to look at that, on getting them out on a cheaper bail or getting them out on ankle bracelets or something like that to keep them out of the facility. We've got to look at having a mental program to handle some of the people who are in that particular position. They get in jail, they can't get out, and they just sit there. That's not good. We've got to get them out of there. Same way with alcoholism. We've got to get the ones that are having alcohol problems. They don't belong in jail. They belong in some kind of treatment plan. And we have to look at treatment, whether it's our county treatment or whether it's the city or the state. We certainly need the treatments to reduce the number of people that are sitting there waiting for a trial.
Thank you. And now Mr. Saudi, same question. What are your ideas for increasing rates of incarceration and how to deal with it?
Well, the increased rates of incarceration come with increased crime. I don't think anybody's sitting in jail that hasn't committed a crime. That's a sad fact. It's an element that's crept into our society, and yeah, we have a responsibility to work on it from all angles. The legislature sets penalties. The judges have to enforce those. I would hope that as we move into our new modern facility of the Burleigh County and Morton County Jail, that we have treatment offerings. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know, there's a percentage of people that will not adapt to treatment. They don't want it, and it's not going to work. And I don't think we need to make it one size fits all. It needs to be an incentive to be earned, and maybe they have a reduced sentence if they'll enter treatment and really make it work. But they got to want to do it.
Thank you. And now for the final question of this evening. Time has certainly flown by as we've participated in this League of Women Voters Forum with our candidates for the Burleigh County Commission seats. And we'll direct this one with Jerry Sowdy started. So Mr. Sowdy, this question. During the discussion about incarceration, it was referenced by Mr. Woodcox the growing concerns and demands placed by those with mental health issues. That's also something that's creeping into housing. Burleigh County has a relationship with the Housing Authority. This question is, have you or are you familiar with the Burleigh County Housing Authority and their management of sites including Crescent Manor? And what are your plans to help with housing for people that have those issues that they're dealing with? What is the county's responsibility?
I am not at all versed in what they do. My experience now lies with nursing homes as a member of the Missouri Slope Lutheran Care Center Board. But I also read recently about a governor in a state, or maybe it was a large city, that worked with creating shelter, giving homeless people actual apartments and giving them a new lease on life. They needed to earn that right, but it gave them a chance to start over. Sometimes life just knocks a person down and they can't get back on their own. So I think that we do have a responsibility to our fellow man to make some opportunities available that way. And it's something that we'd have to sell to the public because it's going to be different. I think they have a bad view of public housing, but we also need to police it strongly.
Thank you. And Mr. Bittner, same question. Burleigh County, excuse me, is relationship.
You don't need to repeat the question. I think I can be real clear. The Burleigh County Commission has nothing to do with Burleigh County Housing Authority. The Burleigh County Housing Authority is like a housing and urban development type of program, and outside of a seat or a portfolio of one county commissioner, there is no power and there is no ability of the Burleigh County Commission to do anything about that particular issue you're talking about.
Thank you. And Mr. Woodcox.
Like Brian said, that's a federally funded program. Burleigh County has nothing to do with it, nor does the city. All we do is appoint the members that are on there, and we just put on 2 new ones, and they are very active and they're doing a great job. I really don't think Burleigh County needs to be in the housing business, low income or high income. That's not our job. We certainly don't have the funding, nor do we have the expertise to handle something like that. That's a need of the federal government and the state government for low-income housing, or a developer.
Thank you. And now you'll have 1 minute to provide the audience with a closing comment or statements. The last question, we started with Mr. Sowdy, so we are on to Mr. Bittner. Mr. Bittner, 1 minute for closing remarks.
I don't really have a whole lot as far as closing remarks. I think the public sees me every couple of weeks on TV and how we handle the county's business, and I hope that I'll continue to earn the public's trust moving forward, and I'll certainly do the best I can for the public.
Thank you. Mr. Woodcox.
I think the next 2 or 3 years are going to be very difficult for Burleigh County, Bismarck, but I still think that we are in excellent shape. Burleigh County is in good financial shape. We do need experience to handle that, to move forward with it, to monitor it, and keep our taxes as low as we possibly can. But our airport boardings are up. Our building permits are holding steady. Our sales tax is holding steady. We're in an excellent position. but I think we need experience in order to handle that and see what happens down the road and handle any problems that might come up.
Thank you. Mr. Saudi, 1 minute for final comments.
I came to Bismarck 25 years ago for a job, and I'm still at that job and intend to be there a few more years. The community in this Bismarck, Mandan, Burleigh County offers a lot. I mean, it's a beautiful part of the state, and it has been run well. My vision as a county commission is kind of a philosophy that good government provides the basic needs as outlined to us in the Constitution. When you start providing for wants that are paid for from many that benefit a few, then I think we have excessive government. And so I would really like to work at streamlining government and looking at cooperation between the city, the county, and the townships, and the rural cities and villages in Burleigh County. That's my hope.
Well, thank you all. I wish to also thank the Bismarck Tribune, Dakota Media Access, and the volunteers from the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. Thank you to the viewers at home and the audience members here tonight for taking time to learn more about the candidates and issues. This program will replay several times on Government Access, Cable Channel 2, and 602 in high definition, and will be available for online viewing at freetv.org in the days leading up to the June 14th election. Before we close this candidate forum, we remind you that you will need a form of identification to vote in North Dakota. You can find identification requirements and additional voting information on the websites or at the offices of your county auditor or the North Dakota Secretary of State. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.